why is inflation even a thing then? If the money is like, if the dollar is worth like 10% less because 10% inflation, can we always be like, nope, it's not. It's back where it was 100 years ago. Like, we could just do that, right? I don't know how you would do that, but you could theoretically could just do that.
Well,
If this philosophical conversation of money is just what we all agree it is, how do we have inflation then?
Because because as more of it is printed, as more of it comes out, as we live in a debt-based world, where the banks are incentivized to continue to pump out money, well, the more money that exists, the less each dollar is worth, or whatever we want to call it. Gold had inflation too. There was massive inflation
in 1970s. Yep.
I'm going to go back way before that. There was massive inflation in the early 1500s. Why? And think about why. If it was a gold-based economy, why would there have been massive inflation?
1500s?
Yep.
Oh, God, that was before America. Man, what was going on in the 1500s? This is in Europe?
The conquistadors found loads of gold in America and brought it back to Europe. And so there was
it was an influx, right? Too much supply.
Yeah, so there was a relatively fixed amount of gold because it was difficult to mine. It wasn't all that plentiful, and all of a sudden, the Spaniards found all this gold in the New World and brought it back to Spain, and as a result, it actually devalued gold to a certain extent, meaning it took more gold to buy a certain amount of goods and services. That's inflation. The reason gold has been typically considered an inflation hedge is it's relatively fixed. Whereas if we're talking about ones and zeros and credit and fractional reserve banking, well, that can continually go up. The problem is if you live in a debt-driven world like we do, inflation is bad, but deflation is worse. Because you want to be able to, if you borrow the money to buy a house, right? Let's go back to your $400,000 house. So if you have your house and you take out a mortgage that's worth let's call it $300,000. Just keep the numbers easy. If there's a little bit of inflation, you remember what I said about the present value of money. So in theory, that $300,000 in today's money is really, it's worth $250,000, by the time you're done with the mortgage in 15 or 30 years. Meanwhile, in the meantime, hopefully inflation has picked up the value of your house so that you'll be able to sell your house when the time comes for $450,000 or $500,000, that kind of thing. So if you're in a debt-driven world, you need a little inflation because you want. It incentivizes borrowing of money. The problem is it gets out of hand. It impacts people's living standards. Those who are lending the money don't really want to just keep lending it too much if there's too much inflation. And so we've arbitrarily decided that 2% is the number. Deflation is a problem because you don't want to be paying back in real terms more money than you borrowed. That's a real problem. You at least want to just be paying back. You want to be paying back in real terms no more than what you borrowed, and you certainly don't want the value of the assets that are behind that debt. You don't want them to depreciate. So that's why inflation is bad, but deflation is worse.